The current testimony is being filed August 4th, 2022, in response to the testimony that someone named Alex Jones was sued for saying that the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School was fake. He was forced to fork over $4 million, I believe. I don't know anything about the Sandy Hook incident, except some darling children were killed, and that it testified to the civil destruction being wrought by the United States, but on the United States, within the United States, by Clint Eastwood and his fan base. Alex Jones, I have absolutely no idea why he would embroil himself in such a ridiculous caper by saying something so patently false. But I suspect it may have had something to do with the larger matter involving Donald Trump's authorship of the Texas school book. Let me immediately give you an analogy. You can go into YouTube and you can see Dan Rather brainwashing himself, rubbing his temples, closing his eyes, and telling us for all time, for all history, because none of us were allowed to see the Zapruder film, and to put everybody to sleep, that Kennedy's head goes violently forwards. Anybody who has ever seen the Zapruder film since it finally got out knows his head goes violently backwards. That's tantamount to calling the Sandy Hook shooting a fake. It's just as bad. It's 1,000 times as bad. It's just it leaves me speechless. And I get letters from people staking me out for the Post Office Union, who murdered Circe Kennedy and ripped off the museums for Trump and Putin and their pals. In Pittsburgh, it chased me into homelessness and poisoned me and wrote a script lying about me for Yoko Ono, in which I have researched details proving that they faked Sean Lennon's murder. And they now parade Dan Rather saying, well, whatever direction Kennedy's head's gone, we would rather not believe or look at or mainstream or in any way engage or allow testifying to or see somebody make a penny. They Ripper murdered a girl over a penny, saying that that's the whole genius of the crime, the penny, making a penny. That's the whole thing. Who's going to get the penny? Who's going to get to say it was true? Who's going to get plastic reality rights? And the retards in Seattle stood there while these people released AIDS, paused a moment when they poisoned me in the mouth and released COVID, and said, let's go do them again, monkeypox. Gee, golly gee, green wheelikers. And they're going to make a sacred penny. And nobody's ever going to point out that the Adolf Hitler faction behind this group named the Beatles. The Beatles were named after the VW Beetle. Adolf Hitler, with the Beatles, were his favorite band all along. Let's look at some evidence. During Prague Spring, evidence, I said, oh my God, no, you're starting rumors. Evidence. Prague Spring ran from about, April to November of 1968. During that period of Prague Spring, the uprising against, the control haunted of Europe, the Euro nutters. King was killed, Bobby Kennedy was killed, and then on November 22nd, 1968, we were told white was a symbol of Japanese mourning. The November 22nd, 1968, the Beatles' White Album comes out. Mourning, right? Kennedy's head goes violently forwards, is their idea of mourning. Zapped him right between the eyes, zap! All the children saying that's mourning. No one, they blew his mind out in the car, and he cuts out America saying the British Army had just won the war. Nobody remembered him anymore. Do you remember President Nixon? Kennedy's head went violently backwards. He was shot from the front. Jackie Kennedy was involved, and she was secreted off to Aristotle Onassis. The Beatles were involved. They started writing songs about it that had images of the Carousel Club. Dum, 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 dum. And he ran a strip joint, which was like the hair movement. You know, everybody strip, everybody take off your clothes. And if evidence was found for pornographic genocide encrypted in the Japanese pornography system. The script from Israel names Nabucco about something about a stupid code about what boys should do and girls should do. She was the star of the film Children of Hiroshima. I'm talking about evidence, and these came through the postal union, through the fuckers who killed Searcy and Shannon. The Clinton Eastwood Veterans Association has jobs in the post office and knows who's talking to who. Resolved that I will testify that they are pulling a fast one. Now I found their super story, and it's online in my research blog, and I'm making progress in determining who thought these things out. But you could find the way that the Cubist movement, who was heavily involved in the society around the Beatles. I was actually introduced to a friend of Ouspensky, P.D. Ouspensky, the Kharkiv Moscow philosopher, who was working with Prokofiev and Picasso back in the 1910s by Robert Fripp of King Crimson. There's an article in this book. Notice the indexes, because Dolly Myron, you know, who set up the business with Rosa, was associated with Sean Shrub, who was outside the Dakota when the double was killed by Mark David Chapman. There's an article about these guys, okay? The Cubists. They were associated with the Cubists, who also called themselves the Futurists. And if you look at The Killers, which came out, it had another span. It was made from about May 1963 and released in January 1964, which is why they withheld the Zapruder film, because it shows the same exact evidence. They said the same thing. And Angela Dickinson was having an affair with Kennedy, supposedly. When Reagan kills her boyfriend in the film, she got a call that Kennedy had been killed. Oh, coincidence, karma. It was a juxtaposition. The Cubists were also called the Futurists. Ozo has a film where they have a scene where one of the men takes a golf club and like a scimitar. They're using an encrypted message scene, and they encrypt the futurism of their snuff film operations. The reason Trumpy Tune called Paris the capital of Germany is because it symbolized the occupation. I don't think Americans are stupid. I think they're cringing. They don't dare tell the truth. And what you would rather do is go along with them, wouldn't you? It's the way they think. They don't want it to be said. that the evidence shows, evidence, we will kill you if you say evidence. They don't want it to be said that the evidence shows that Lennon faked it, because it would require admitting that the evidence showed, looking at the evidence that shows that Lennon faked it. Reagan's attorney from Pentagon, Disney, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency had me in D.C. the day he claimed he was shot. He came out and waved to me the night before, and they gave me a brochure that says there's no such thing as objective reality, only what the jury believes. Hollywood magic, going all the way back to the theories of 1910. This guy was working with Spassky, was working with Prokofiev and Picasso. I'll show you how productive my research is. Here's a picture of another one of them working with Stravinsky. These men do not leave a trace that's perceptible. I have 4 professional librarians on the job trying to help me find out where Spassky crossed paths with D.W. Griffith, and not one of them could figure it out. I finally got hold of the obscure information, but it took 4 professional librarians 4 hours to demonstrate that the answer is that they vanished the evidence. They were working with Houdini and pulled a Houdini. Their vanishing point is that it vanished. It's not there. It's very difficult to trace how these people operated. But they left behind a smoking gun called the Texas School Book. They pulled a Houdini. Reagan's whole concept of having Casper in charge of the Department of Defense was based on Casper the Friendly Ghost, who was Hitler down in Argentina. His friend King Edward came to the United States in 1920, and to a rousing cheers of Wall Street, announced in New York that the Church of England should be in charge of Hollywood. And they have something by Veronica Lake. I've told people over and over and over again, look at this Gun for Hire's clip of Veronica Lake, Now You See It. Just go to YouTube and put in Veronica Lake, Now You See It. She holds the Ace of Spades, which is a symbol of death, and comes back from the dead in the end. These people worked with Spassky, a 4th-dimensional psychologist. These people conceived, while they were controlling the Beatles, the Volkswagen, Ford Motor Company met with Hitler. Henry Ford was awarded the highest award that Germany could give to America. And D.W. Griffith was promoting the Reich and making Americans slaves to the idea of black inferiority with his grandiose epics. Alan Dulles, a friend of Hitler who met with him for the Schroeder Bank to forgive his campaign debts in 1933, put Cecil B. DeMille in charge of Radio Free Europe. This was the crowd in 1910 who were talking about how to use time and energy and working with Houdini, Hollywood magic, to control not the 2nd dimension, but the 3rd dimension of reality from the 4th dimension of their aristocratic esoteric circle. The script showed up in Pitt, where the Vienna Circle was. The Vienna Circle is one of the foremost movements of philosophy in Europe. They met at the University of Pittsburgh. They produced the Texas School Book.